You're listening to Seek Travel Ride, a podcast sharing bike adventures from people from all over the world. And this episode is sponsored by Old Man Mountain, makers of the most durable bike racks out there. If you want to head out on an adventure, you need to strap gear onto your bike, and Old Man Mountain have you covered in a myriad of ways. Head to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Now, on to today's episode. Hello everyone, Bella Malloy here, host of Seek Travel Ride. Welcome to another midweek episode where I'm fueling your stoke for bike adventure travel. This week I'm super excited because I have another update from our intrepid adventurer, Olly Hargreaves. Now, we haven't had an update through from Olly for a while, so we're a little bit behind in terms of real time, but I'm excited to share this update because not only is it going to be telling us about his time spent on the Annapurna Circuit, surrounded by the impressive Himalayas, but it's actually also going to be touching on a point of adventure travel, which I guess we all hope never happens to us. And that is because Olly ended up in hospital after a crash. He needed an operation, and he's in the Himalayas for this. Now, as many people who listen to this show plan out their adventures, obviously we always like to think of the amazing experiences we're going to have. And the thought of what happens if things go wrong, well, it's not something that we want to think about, but it's also the reality of what does that actually look like when it happens. So Olly is going to fill us in on all of that. And before we get into Olly's story, I wanted to give a shout out to our awesome community on Instagram. I put a call out to you all there. It was actually off the back of last week's midweek episode with Brian Sampson. And Brian is writing to the 1,000 places in the world to see before you die. And I sort of put the call out to say, what places do you recommend people should put on their list that you've discovered on a bike? And I've had a few responses I want to share here. The first one is from cycling.hokkaido.podcast. Now, listeners, if you're into Japan and discovering it on a bike, you definitely want to give them a listen. Anyway, they have said an abandoned Canadian World theme park in Ashibetsu, Hokkaido. They sent me through some photos. This park looks, so quirky. There's something that I feel is intrinsically Japanese about it as well. So that's a shout out. Jim Jam 18, he said the West Fjords of Iceland. They're quiet, magnificent, winding roads. I've got Stephen who has said the Pyrenees Mountains in France. Oh, well, I'm on board with that. Anna Rudderman, previous guest of the show, you have said the Gorges de Galamoose. They come straight to my mind. They are epic. And Anna, as you know, I've been there. And in fact, listeners, I was there, I think the day before or after Anna and her girlfriend Fran were there, and we unfortunately didn't come together, but I can attest for the magnificence of riding in this spectacular gorge road. Rodovelo_Nort, you have said a rest area. It was 20 kilometres west of Cocklebiddy on the Nullarbor, a cool morning, no wind, and I'm sure I felt the age of Australia there. I've seen this landscape only in photos and other people's videos, and I can 100% understand your feelings there. And also a quick shout out to you. I know that you're recovering from surgery at the moment, so listeners, you'll all join me in wishing Rodovella_Nort well in their recovery. Sammy_Musket. Hey Sammy, you're a legend, an ultra legend. You are just signed up for Via Race this year and with the aspirations of taking it out, I believe. And you have said the Colla de Nivelle, the hard way to hike a bike, gaining 6 places in my first ever ultra. Oh, I can imagine that'll be super special. And, I'm a mountain lover, Sammy, so picking out a mountain pass, and you sent me through some pics, it looked like hard yakka on the hiker bike, but I can imagine the memories there are special. And then Maddie.travels, you have said lovely, lovely China. And listeners, keep your eyes and ears peeled because I have recorded an interview with Maddie, which will come out in a few weeks' time. So you're going to hear all about his experiences there. Then last but not least, I have Mark Williams. And you have said, I think my most epic adventure was the Las Montañas Vascas in Spain. Did it solo over 9 days camping, 680 kilometres and 1,300 metres. And oh my goodness me, wow. Yeah, the scenery there is breathtaking. There we go, listeners. A few hot tips. I'd love to hear about your own as well. Hit me up. Send me an Instagram DM and let me know what's a place that you've discovered on a bike that you think everybody in this world should have an opportunity to see with their own eyes. And on that note, now it's time to hear the update from Olly Hargreaves. So this is going to start us off where he left off, which was Kazakhstan. He's going to talk about his time in India, travelling from there to Nepal and then the Annapurna base camp, and, of course, what happens when things don't go as planned. Take it away, Olly.
Hey Bella, it's Olly here. Time for another update. I left you last when I was in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, and we were getting a flight over to New Delhi in India because we had issues with getting visas for China and avoiding the crossing from Pakistan into India as well. So we got the flight over really easily, no issues at the airport, thankfully, with the bike boxes. And we arrived in New Delhi on Diwali, the night of Diwali. So we were really thrown in at the deep end of Indian culture, which was nice, but absolute chaos. We actually decided to build the bikes at the airport and cycle from there to the hotel due to taxis being a bit funny. And we definitely made the right call because when we got to our place to stay, there was like nowhere that we could have built the bike. So we dodged a bullet there. We got a tuk-tuk into the centre of New Delhi and kind of saw what was about while we could. We were a bit rushed for time because my mum was flying out not long after, and we had to get from New Delhi all the way to Pokhara in Nepal and do the Annapurna Circuit before she came. So we had one night there. We explored the area and kind of joined in with some of the festivities and got shown around by a local as well, which was quite nice. And then in the morning, we set off to basically get as far out as we could because we also wanted to head down to Agra to see the Taj Mahal. We spent the first half of that morning having a look around New Delhi as well because obviously we wanted to still see the sights alongside cycling. It'd be a shame to miss it. And then, we spent the next few days cycling through India towards Agra along some interesting roads. However, obviously we were used to the roads of like the Pamirs, for example. So actually they appeared to us to be quite nice in comparison. And it took us, I think, 3 days to get from New Delhi to Agra. And then we saw the Taj Mahal and explored a little bit around that area before hitting the road again and continuing up to Nepal. Cycling in India was a much different experience to anything else that we had done so far. And just due to the chaos of the roads, it's just absolutely mental. You've got to really, really be aware of what's going on around you because you end up getting crashed into whether you like it or not. We actually ended up with a tally chart between the three of us that were cycling of who got hit by what. And it was like, tuk-tuks, mopeds and motorbikes and each other ended up on the list. I think it took us 6 days or something to cycle from New Delhi to Agra and then up to get into Nepal. We were really hitting some big days there and we were just staying in cheap hotels. There's basically nowhere that you can camp in India. So, we definitely didn't see anywhere you could. And to be fair, there was 3 of us and places to stay are so cheap that actually it is sometimes just worth it for an actual bed. Although the mosquitoes were absolutely awful and nearly every hotel room we'd always wake up absolutely covered in bites, which wasn't ideal. But other than that, we actually didn't have any issues in India relatively to what we thought we might. We actually gave ourselves an extra day or two just in case we got food poisoning because we thought it was probably quite a high risk. But actually our stomachs held up better in India than they did in Central Asia, which was interesting. And especially because, we were stopping on the side of the road every day getting street food, which was absolutely delicious. It was, some of the best food actually I've had on the trip. And it was, pennies as well. It was so cheap, which just meant that we got more. Every time we stopped, we ended up having like 3 portions. But it was really busy and chaotic for the majority. And then the closer we got to Nepal, it actually became a lot smoother tarmac-wise and a lot easier riding, not as much people on the road. And going through some really, really nice kind of jungle areas. You had warnings up for tigers and elephants and all sorts of things to watch out for. The people in India were also really friendly, sometimes a little bit too friendly. I think Malachi might have mentioned on his podcast, but he had some issues with gentlemen being a little bit too friendly with him. And we actually had the same thing, trying to grab you in places you don't want to be grabbed. Something we weren't really expecting, to be honest. But made the most of it and joked about it in the end. But other than that, everyone was really helpful. We had people giving us some water and some food as well on the side of the road. every single day we had people stopping us to take photos and asking us for Instagrams and YouTubes and all sorts of things. Everyone just kind of wanted to know what we were doing out there on the bike, I guess. But it was actually a really pleasant experience in all. There was one night actually that one of the locals that was eating around us came and kind of overstayed his welcome and was a bit, not very nice. So he ended up causing a bit of trouble, but that was the only bad experience. Yeah. But yeah, going back to taking photos and stuff with people, we ended up being really efficient at taking photos with people because you get all these mopeds coming alongside you saying, stop, photo. And what we ended up doing was being like, all right, give us your phone now. And we'd take the phone off them, take a photo with them whilst we were cycling so we didn't have to stop, and hand the phone back to them in the end, because we ended up stopping like 20 times a day or something. That ended up being how we got around that issue. Yeah, so made it all the way up to Nepal, and then things started to get immediately quieter actually, and a little bit cleaner as well. Like, one thing about the streets in India is there is so much litter, and it's not very pleasant, especially like you got a country that's so beautiful and you're seeing all the rubbish on the side of it. It kind of ruins it a little bit. But yeah, we made it up to Nepal. So the first impression of Nepal, we got to the border crossing. It was all fairly easy coming out of India. We had to put bags through the scanners going into Nepal, and then we had to go through the customs to get the visa and stuff, because it's all visa on arrival. And they take the payment in dollars, which the only thing we had was, I had a $100 note, and they just refused to take it, which was really, really annoying, because that was supposed to pay for me and Josh's visa. It was really late, and we planned on getting a lot further than we ended up doing because we were stuck at the visa place for like 2 hours or something ridiculous. And it was almost perfect, pristine, dollar bill. And for whatever reason, they didn't take it, but we just kept being like, look, we've literally got nothing else that we can give you. You need to take this, otherwise we can't, pay for the visa. And eventually he did let it through. So had all this faff for basically no reason, which was a little bit annoying. But anyway, we got through. We decided to get a hotel for the night instead of camping, which was the initial plan, which again cost absolutely nothing in comparison to what it would do back home. I had the initial kind of, first morning, set up SIM cards, all that kind of stuff, and then headed back out. And cycling through Nepal was just absolutely beautiful. It was almost entirely jungle areas with really nice roads. Same kind of craziness as India, but in comparison, way less busy. All the Nepalese people were really, really kind as well. They helped Josh sew up one of his bags that had ripped. I didn't charge him. They said, no, we're not going to charge you for it, which was really nice. And we had the same kind of thing of everyone kind of stopping us for photos as well, which was really pleasant. Obviously, all the way through from Delhi to almost Pokhara is pretty much flat. So that was also nice change from being in Central Asia and, Kyrgyzstan, where we'd been climbing up loads of big hills, and Tajikistan, of course. And we made it all the way through. Nepal didn't camp once, actually, in the end. We did intend to, but we kind of left it too late every night to actually find a spot, and ended up just getting hotel rooms, which, again, were really cheap, so it wasn't really an issue. We made it all the way to Pokhara after maybe 6 days or so, a day earlier than planned, which was nice. Again, had 1 day off in Pokhara, I think, and then sorted everything out for the Annapurna Circuit, which we plan on doing. You need to go and get your entry permit for the national park, and take enough cash out to last you for the time that you're there, because there's not really any ATMs en route, and get some warmer gear as well from all the fake mountaineering shops that you get, which you can get big duvet jackets and things for like £10 or something silly. And yeah, we got all sorted and ready to take on the Annapurna Circuit. So yeah, Annapurna ready. We set off, and you got basically a day to Besisar, which is kind of the start of the actual Annapurna circuits, and then took it on. Day to day it's beautiful. The first 2 days you're slowly creeping up into the mountains. You don't actually see the Himalayas, and then suddenly you're there, and you've got these 8,000 plus meter peaks staring down at you whilst you're at maybe 2,000 meters of elevation. So these things are like 6,000+ meters higher than you are, which in comparison, like the Pamir Highway, you're sat at like 4,000 meters roughly, 3,000 to 4,000 meters, and they're about 7,000 meters, so about 3,000 meters higher than you are. And you know, you've got mountains that are double that height, higher than where you are in the Himalayas, and it is just absolutely mesmerizing. Words really struggle to describe it. It's really something you got to experience for yourself, and I'm sure loads of people will say that as well. It's just absolutely, it's daunting in a way. You're staring up at these things that are so much higher than you are, and as well, you know that people are probably at that moment trying to summit them as well. It's just absolutely beautiful. And that continues basically the entire circuit from like day 2 or something onwards. And it just gets better and better. Yeah, the further and further up you get, the more you're surrounded by bright white peaks. It's obviously called the Annapurna Circuit, but you don't actually see Annapurna 1, which is really irritating. You see all the other Annapurnas, which are still seriously impressive mountains, but you don't actually see Annapurna 1, which is one of the...
Listeners, when I head away from home on my own bike adventures, there are a few things I always take with me, and having a VPN has become non-negotiable. Remote work and bike travel are just a fact of life for me now, especially as I split my time between Australia and France. I've been using NordVPN for around 4 years now, and it means that I can get on with all the boring life admin that isn't going away just because I'm on my own bike adventure. I can use public Wi-Fi to do things like banking, logging on from cafes, campgrounds, hotels, train stations and airports. And I always know NordVPN have got my back, giving me peace of mind that my data is protected. I like that Nord's simple and fast to use. It works on all of my devices. To get the best discount off your own NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/STR. Our link's going to give you 4 extra months on their 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link's in the podcast episode description box. Support the brands that are supporting this podcast. Now back to the episode.
Big ones. Yeah, day to day, the Annapurna Circuit as well, you're going up to all these kind of little rural villages, and everyone has a load of hotels that you can stay for the night. And what normally is the case, and what we had every single time, is you basically get to stay for free as long as you eat, you know, kind of dinner and breakfast there. The prices are a little bit hiked in comparison to everywhere else, but you've got a free accommodation technically, so it kind of balances out. And all the owners are really lovely and helpful as well. They point you towards all the kind of interesting parts where you're staying. There's a couple of places at the start of the circuit which have hot springs, and they're like, what time do you want dinner? You can go down to the hot springs and then come back up and I'll serve. They're really nice and helpful. We had about 5 days up to Murgab, I think it is, where you're just over about 3,500 meters. So you have like an acclimatization day there, really. And there was a walk up to what's called the Ice Lake. And we took a day to go up there, where got to the top, and me more than anyone else kind of had like a bad altitude headache. But I've done other bits before, you know, I've done Mont Blanc, and I know me and my body kind of acclimatizes, and basically I get a bad headache the first day. When I get back down, have a nap, have a load of water, paracetamol, and sleep it off, and then I'll be fine. So the other two were quite worried about me, but I kind of knew what was happening, so it was okay. Josh fell ill that night, so we decided to have an extra rest day the day after as well. And just in case my acclimatization was an issue. Anyway, it all turned out all right, and we set off the next day despite Josh feeling very under weather. And we had two days up to high camp from there. From this point, you've cycled the whole way to Murgab, like not any pushing your bike. It's all pretty rideable. But when we were doing it, the storm had just come in and it had dumped so much snow that the pass itself was actually closed, and we didn't know whether or not we were going to be able to do it. We had this time limit and we really needed to do it. So if we were going to do it, it was then or never. And we thought, you know, worst comes to worst, we get turned back and that's it. Fortunately, by the time we got to Murgab, it had just reopened. So we're like, right, brilliant, let's go for it. But it meant that obviously all the bits up there were completely covered in snow. That's where you start to be, you're carrying hiker bike, carrying the bike on your shoulder up these steps. You can't really ride on the snow because, well, me and Josh at least had kind of smoother touring tyres, and Voiter actually had some mountain tyres, so he was actually relatively okay. I made it up to High Camp, which sits at just over 4,000 metres, I think, or somewhere around that. And it is absolutely Baltic up there. Everything's covered in snow and it's absolutely freezing. At this time as well, we actually bumped into Daisy and Charlie, who live actually just around the corner from Josh, and they were also on bikes. They've been touring around similar to what we had been doing, but they had made the good decision of leaving their steel frame touring bikes in Pokhara and renting out some lightweight aluminium mountain bikes, which might have been a better idea. They had rucksacks on as well, so they were a bit of a lighter setup. And I know that a few other people had actually gone up on bikes as well. We'd met some other hikers that had seen some guys on bikes before us. There was definitely a few other people doing it, and I know, from Instagram and things, more and more people actually seem to be doing Annapurna by bike, which is interesting. And then the day to summit the pass came. We basically just said, go at your own pace and we'll meet at the top. So Voiter is absolutely rapid, and he made it up to the top way before either of us. The whole day, again, nothing rideable at all. It was completely covered in snow. We'd actually bought some little crampon things, some spikes for the shoes so that we could have a bit better grip as well. And we went over and summited the top around 11 or 12. But yeah, got to the top and had our usual celebratory photos, and then we had to go down the hill, which was worse than anything else on the Annapurna Circuit because, again, couldn't ride it. It was really slushy by this point because the sun had melted everything, and it was just a really unenjoyable experience going down that hill. We had a bit of a headache again from the altitude, which didn't help either. And me and Josh, again, were kind of like close together coming off. And at one point, Josh actually slipped over. Because of the snow, the tracks weren't really there. Just snow on the mountain, basically. And we got to this point where it was really loose snow and he kind of slipped over and had his bike hanging off. And I saw him from the bottom. I was waiting for him. And I saw him slip over, but he looked like he was all right and he was laughing. And then he tried to adjust himself and get himself up and realised that he couldn't. And he ended up sliding down a bit further. And there was this massive boulder at the bottom, to which I think he was very worried that if it did slip, that it wouldn't have ended very well. So he let out a little yelp and asked for some help. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So I dropped all my stuff. I was eating a sandwich or something and threw it onto this bench and legged it up to try and help him as fast as I can. But obviously, again, we're still at really high altitude. So I think I made it like 150 metres. I just absolutely ran out of energy and breath. And I was looking at him like, I literally can't reach him in time. So I got myself back up and made it over to him, by which point these Sherpas behind him had picked him up and helped him out. And then, yeah, we made it back off the mountain. And there's a little cafe at the bottom, nice little cafe to have a cold drink and just relax a little bit before making our way down to the next town and getting some accommodation for the night. So that's what we did. We made it to one of the little villages and towns at the bottom after coming off the pass, and we stayed for the night. And then we got up in the day, and the plan was actually to do a really big day and get all the way from there back to Pokhara. And as you already know, the day did not go to plan. We ended up actually meeting back up with Daisy and Charlie, and we were riding with them and another guy that was on his bike from Germany. Day was going really well. We were making some pretty good progress. It was looking like we probably weren't going to make it to Pokhara, to be honest, at that point anyway. We were flying down these big hills, and this is kind of where disaster struck. I hit a really tight hairpin bend, which had a massive pothole in the middle of it. And all I can think is that I kind of tried to swerve out of the pothole, and there was gravel on the road, and the back tyre just gave out, fell over, landed the complete wrong way on my shoulder, and My collarbone had basically snapped in half and shattered, basically. I immediately knew something wasn't right. I came up and I'd also hit my head when I fell over, and the helmet saved me. If I was not wearing a helmet, it could have ended seriously bad. But fortunately, I was absolutely fine from that. It was just that I could see this bone sticking out where it shouldn't have been. I picked the bike up and walked it off to the side of the road, and the other 2 or 3 that were behind me came up and were like, "Oh, are you all right?" To which I kind of showed them, like, nope, it's, I fucked it, basically. They were really helpful. They managed to flag down a Jeep, and they were going to take me to a hospital that was nearby, and it wasn't like a big hospital, which was about an hour's drive away, which Daisy had thought was about 20-minute ride or something. So she told me, "I'm in this thing for like 20 minutes. Don't worry, we'll cycle to you and get you." Anyway, fortunately, Nick, who we'd cycled with at the start of Nepal, he actually had a week off himself as his brother-in-law was coming out to do some hiking and things, and he happened to be in the place where this hospital was going to be. So he'd seen what was going on in our group chat and said, "Do you want us to pick you up? We're in a Jeep, we can take you to Pokhara." And at this point, I was just like, yeah, because the hospital facilities are probably not going to be that good up here. And again, like, I was in this Jeep and it was going over the worst roads possible, potholed, looking like it had been bombed. And the driver was not taking his time. He was flooring it over these bumps, and he must have thought I was dying or something with the noises that were coming out. It was probably the worst hour of my life coming down in that. So anyway, Nick picked me up and drove me all the way to hospital in Pokhara, which fortunately the driver was nice, and again, it saved my skin, because I think what would have happened is I think they would have got a helicopter to take me if I hadn't have gone in with their Jeep. So I had the Jeep back down all the way to Pokhara, which took an extra 3 hours or 4 hours or something like that. And in the meantime, I called up Dad to let him know what had happened, as Mum was about to get a flight out to come and see me to do some hiking. And I asked for his help with getting in touch with the insurance so that I would end up in a hospital that would be covered by them. And they pointed me towards this hospital that was in Pokhara. So anyway, that's where I ended up. The hospital itself was actually really nice, and everyone was very helpful there. I had insurance contacted already to start up a case and things, which absolutely worked out so well, because had I have not had insurance, I think I would have been forking out like an 8 grand, maybe even 10, 12 grand medical bill. So yeah, if you're listening and you're considering getting insurance, it's worth it. I had a couple of days in the hospital before doing the surgery, to which all they really gave me was paracetamol, which didn't do much. The break was bad enough that I had to have a plate put in to fix me back together. And meanwhile, Mum had actually landed in Kathmandu, and she decided to come over to Pokhara and help me after hospital. I was in hospital for 5 or 6 days, I think, in total, or maybe even 7, roughly a week. Yeah, I was released. I had to keep going back and forth with the hospital for checkups on how it was healing, to make sure it wasn't getting infected, how the stitches were doing, and then eventually to get the stitches removed. So obviously, with the break happening, my initial plan of hiking around the Himalayas with Mum for 3 weeks quickly dissipated, and we just looked into other options of what we could do. And we ended up going around all sorts of areas in Nepal, which actually, it's quite nice because we got to see places that we didn't initially plan on seeing. So we saw Chitwan National Park, where they're doing these amazing things with trying to rehabilitate rhinos and bring their population back, as they were really endangered quite, not that long ago. And now actually they're making quite a steady rise. And we saw that. It did end up doing a hike. We walked up to Poon Hill, which was really nice to be able to actually do some of the things that we planned, even if it was just a smaller version. Mum ended up doing a paraglide as well, which she's always wanted to do. So it was nice that she managed to do that. And yeah, we ended up getting a Jeep over to Kathmandu, where again we saw some more of Nepal and learned a bit of their history and about the culture. One of the things that I found interesting about Nepal is they have these living goddesses, which is a really strange concept. And it's basically a girl is picked around the age of 2 or 3, maybe. It might be a little bit younger. And they decide that they're the embodiment of one of the goddesses, and they stay the goddess until basically they first hit puberty, is the idea. And all these people come over, these pilgrims, and worship her and give her blessings, to which she returns blessings. That was a really fascinating part of the culture that I had no idea existed. We actually stumbled on it by accident whilst exploring part of Kathmandu. So yeah, after exploring Kathmandu and all sorts of different parts of Nepal, obviously my mum had come out to visit me, and my initial plan anyway was to fly over from there to Thailand. Because of everything that happened, thankfully I could send my bike back in a box with all the gear with mum, as obviously I hadn't planned on continuing cycling anyway. Me and Ellie were meeting back up in Bangkok, and we were going to travel around Southeast Asia the normal way, I guess, with backpacking and stuff. So I sent all my gear back with mum, which was handy because I had actually looked into shipping it back from Bangkok, and it was going to cost an absolute fortune and probably end up being an absolute nightmare to do. So that made things very easy. And I flew over to see Ellie and continued travelling off the bike, which initially was quite difficult because of my collarbone. Obviously wearing a bag was not the most comfortable. It had only been like 3 weeks or so since I'd, broken my collarbone. Yeah, we've spent the last kind of...
Listeners, you will know that I really love Old Man Mountain Gear, and their racks and bags have become a huge part of my own bike travel setup. Now, they've recently released a new item in their lineup, which is the Atlas Rack Pack in a 12-litre version. Now, I've been using their 9-litre version, and gosh, I have FOMO for this one. It sits on top of your pannier rack, and it's just everything the 9-litre version is, but that little bit better. It's got more capacity, which is useful if you need just that little bit of extra room, but you don't want to have to change your whole setup. They've got side pockets now on the outside for easy access, and something that I really love the look of is this air release valve, which means you can compress it down properly once it's packed. It's a great option if you're running panniers and want a stable, easy access top bag. So if you prefer a rack setup over a big seat pack for longer rides and travel, this one could be for you. Go to oldmanmountain.com to check it out. I've got a link in the episode show notes. Support the brands that support this podcast.
2 months travelling around Southeast Asia, going through northern Thailand, Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam. And whilst we're in Vietnam, I've had an interesting update, and Ellie actually came up with the idea to get back on the bike. She really wanted to try bike packing, and we thought, why not? Let's have a look at what it would be like, and we can try and source some bikes in Bangkok. And the plan is to cycle from Bangkok to Bali. So we are currently actually 1 week in, and we've made it all the way to Chumpon, where we're going to get a ferry over to Koh Tao tomorrow and continue the travelling. We'll be spending the next 2 months or so cycling down to Bali and then on to Australia, actually. And we're going to keep the bikes there as well. So it's been really nice to have a break off the bike, and it's been interesting actually travelling around Southeast Asia like how we have been the last couple of months, seeing as obviously the last almost year I've been on the bike, and we're seeing the differences between how those travelling experiences let you see things. And it's a really interesting perspective to have, seeing both sides of it and how much you see in each one, basically. But yeah, the biking is going to continue, and obviously with that, these updates will continue. So I will send over some more soon, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Wow, it honestly does feel like so much happened to you in this update. And where do I even start? Well, I guess I'm going to start with India itself. It's a full-blown sensory experience from everybody that I've ever heard talk about India. And it seems to be a place that people either love or either hate. And it sounds like you really enjoyed it. You did say it was a culture experience, and landing there on the first day of the Diwali festival, I can imagine the celebrations and atmosphere in the streets there would have been wild. Yeah, the attention. I have been told about this from many people traveling through India. I think someone said it's almost like you stop and then all of a sudden there's like a spray-on crowd. There's like so many people around you. And as you alluded to, Malagai does talk as well. Like, there is no personal space, but also there's like a curiosity and an intrigue. But then also where people do overstep the line and, touch you inappropriately, that doesn't sound so great. And crossing the border into Nepal, it sounds like it was just like chalk and cheese. You all of a sudden just had some peace as well, which I imagine was very welcomed. And then the way that you describe being in the Himalayas itself. I asked Olly this question, listeners, of, when you come from cycling the high mountains in the Pamirs to then the Himalayas, like, what are the two different mountain ranges like? And wow, Olly, blows my mind to just think of the starkness of them all because of just that extra elevation that's soaring above your head. Like, it just sounds crazy. I'm fortunate enough where I live in France to see mountains towering above me and I feel teeny, teeny, tiny. But even the peaks that I can see, sometimes they're just going over 3,000 metres in elevation. So I can't really fathom peaks that high. I definitely know I want to be there. Not sure if I want to take a bike on the Annapurna Circuit, Olly, like the hiker bike part. Yeah, I don't know that that's for me. But I definitely want to hike there. And even the way that you describe the villages and the tea houses and how welcoming the Nepali people are, I have heard that, staying in these tea houses, like, it doesn't cost you anything to stay as long as you eat there. And that sounds like a good deal as well. And from what I've heard, listeners, it's not lavish accommodation by any measure, but the hospitality shown to you is something that will warm you up from the inside out. And, oh, gosh, Olly, describing the crash that Josh had and your struggle to try to get there in time and dealing with the altitude and the elevation and, the shortness of breath that comes with anything that involves effort in those areas as well. I could really picture myself in that situation. And then, whoa, breaking the collarbone. I winced when I heard your audio just thinking about what the Jeep ride back would have been like, where you've got this driver absolutely fanging it on these potholed roads. And maybe they were thinking you were dying and they needed to get you to hospital ASAP. But, just every little bump would have been absolute agony. And, yeah, what it was like to actually be in a hospital there, operated on. It sounds like you were taken care of super well. You're pretty fortunate to have your mum there as well. I mean, I'm sure she hadn't signed up for being on mum duties there. And, you both had planned some very different things to do. It sounds like it was great that you were able to do some hiking with her regardless. But, yeah, just the other end of the spectrum, I'm thankful you had insurance. And you obviously had insurance which covered you at an elevation, because I do know that that is a thing where not every travel insurance cover is going to cover you if you're above a certain elevation, especially on a bike. So listeners, definitely consider taking out travel insurance before you leave and read the fine print and make sure that you'll be covered if something happens at elevation, because I do know some policies will exclude you from that. And wow, Olly, it looks like the journey's going to continue. We were saddling up to finishing off following your adventure, but now that Ellie is on board, and I love that this was her idea, I'm keen to hear about your adventures, and it sounds like you're going to be coming to Australia as well. So lots of different things to look forward to. And listeners, I will keep these updates with Olly coming. They have taught me so much about the places that you have been to, Olly, and I especially love your anecdotes about the culture and the sights that you see along the way, and a bit of the folklore and legends and, religious history that you come across as well there. Thank you so much for sharing the updates. All right, listeners, now it's time for me to do my favourite part of the show, which is to say a big warm thank you to you, my super fans, who've been dead set legends and bought me some coffees. Every week these coffee donations come through and your messages of support for the show as well, which fill me up with so much joy. This week I would like to give a shout out to Bev Bradford Ceramics, and you have said, I love the diversity of your interviews, and having cycle toured in the 1990s through France, Ireland, Greece, and recently through the Pyrenees on road bikes, I soak up the adventures that you explore on your podcasts. Oh, well, thank you so much. Wow, it sounds like you've had some pretty cool adventures yourself going back to the 90s, and I don't know whether you've continued to cycle all that time or if you're just rediscovering it now. just the places that you describe there, the experiences that you've had. I'm sure you've had some awesome bike adventures yourself. I'm glad that you love tuning into the podcast, and hopefully it's fueling inspiration for many more bike adventures to come for you as well. Thank you so much. And listeners, if you want to be like Bev Bradford Ceramics and show your support for the show, you can do so by heading to buymeacoffee.com/seek travel ride. Buy me a few virtual coffees, but most importantly, let me know what is it that you love about this podcast and where will your next bike adventure be taking you. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Listeners, that's the end of the episode. But before you go, don't forget to check out Old Man Mountain, who are supporting this podcast. Check out their 12-litre Atlas rack pack, which is a pretty cool addition if you want more space without sacrificing any stability. Head to oldmanmountain.com and support the brands that support this podcast.